There's such dire happenings in the world right now, but if we can go internally, cultivate some sense of capacity, some sense of stillness, equanimity, then we take that out into the world.
Jeanne Corrigal is a filmmaker, mindfulness teacher, and guiding teacher of Saskatoon Insight Meditation community.
The instructions in meditation are contemplate internally and externally. What mindfulness can do is help us come into just this moment without all that story, without all that proliferation, just this moment with this breath, this body. What that can do for a moment is give us a moment of respite, a moment of refuge.
There's something about connecting with ourselves and getting to know directly.
When we live our lives thinking of those things, trying to fix, trying to find a way out, that's challenging.
It's not about let's eliminate them right this second. It's about how to be with them differently.
Does it work to try to stop those thoughts? It does not. The more we push, the stickier they get.
Can you say more about what is quiet joy? Hello, everyone. I am so filled with joy to share today's conversation with Jeanne Corrigal, a being of such depth, wisdom, and joy. She is the guiding teacher for the Saskatoon Insight Meditation community and a graduate of the Insight Meditation Society's teacher training program. She is trained in the Burmese lineage of the Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw with a great affinity for the Thai forest tradition of Ajahn Buddha Dasa and for the teaching of Thich Nhat Hanh. She is a certified mindfulness-based stress reduction MBSR teacher and is certified with Indigenous Focusing Oriented Trauma Therapy, IFOT. I'd love to learn about that, as well as trained in mindful schools and somatic experiencing. She teaches across North America and has taught with Mindfulness Magazine, Lions Roar, and Tricycle online programs. She's Métis, and one of her first teachers and loving presence was Cree Elder Jim Seti. Would love to hear stories about that too. So, friends, we're going to be exploring how mindfulness can help us in a world that seems to be on fire. Not only that, but also finding joy and learning from Indigenous wisdom. Plus, stick around as Jeanne will guide us through a meditation practice. Jeanne Corrigal, a warm welcome to you to the Pause to Elevate podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here, Kasim. I'm so delighted. I'm honored by your podcast and honored to be here.
Thank you so much. For the audience, just to let them know, we've only met once online before this podcast. And I was left last time feeling so good after the conversation, so uplifted.
Mm.
You really exude depth and joy and wisdom. So
Mm.
thank you for taking the time to be with us. Truly.
A huge pleasure.
Thank you. I wonder if we can start with your journey, because it seems that mindfulness draws us from what's happening in our life. Sometimes it's challenging things, sometimes it's good things. So I'm wondering for you, what led you to meditation? What led you to mindfulness?
Interesting. It's a great, like many of the people that might be listening in to this, I came because I was very anxious and stressed and
Mm,
depressed. I
mm,
came from suffering. And I sat one weekend retreat and I touched a little bit of peace there. And
mm,
I knew that this was a path that was really important for me. And then
mm,
later on, also, I recognized this path in the path of the elder Jim Sati that
mm,
I had been so drawn to and um, been connected to most of my life.
mm.
His teachings really mirrored the peace that I touched in that weekend retreat. So the indigenous teaching and mindfulness came together for me. But I came out of suffering.
Mm. So something really pulled you to do this work. And I wonder if you can share a little bit about just being with and learning from Jim Sati. I think that might be a whole podcast, but but I'd
Yeah.
love to hear like what was it like?
He was, I describe him as my teacher in loving presence because he brought mindfulness. That is a deep presence in the world, a
Mm,
deep connection that my father had too, and many of the Métis elders, many Indigenous elders, many
Mm,
Indigenous people will have this just natural, say, connection to everything that's going on around them. My dad and Jim were so connected to nature. It was their teacher
mm,
in how to be present through the senses.
mm,
And then Jim combined that with a great kindness. And that was his teaching. And for me, that's the teaching of our practice. We bring
mm,
mindfulness in on one wing, kindness in on the other, so that we can cultivate a warm, kind of friendly attention, presence with this moment, so that we deeply
mm.
befriend this moment. We deeply befriend everything that's happening in our own system, internally, externally, so that we can find wise response. And when I say befriend, I don't mean we like it or love it, especially if we're in the
Right.
fire of the world, in the crises of the world. But what I mean is that we begin with mindfulness to really be able to be with, in a profound way, everything that's happening in our internal world with
Mm,
steadiness. And then we can choose wisely how to respond to it. Same in the external world. This
mm.
internal contemplation supports us to be with what's happening with steadiness, with, with equanimity in the external world. And then we can find wise response, wise action.
I really appreciate how you're saying this because there's a lot of misconception for some people that meditation you just sit on your own and you're just disconnecting. Somehow, I talk to a lot of people and I teach mindfulness based stress reduction. And sometimes when people begin like, I'm so glad I'm starting this so I can disconnect, and then they find out actually this is about connecting.
Yeah.
And this is deeply connecting to ourselves so we can connect to the world. And as you said, what do we need to do? What action do we need to do? But not from a place of upsetness or anger.
Right. That's the
Right.
key.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the key, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
we we often we do respond to the world, external world. I do, with reactivity, with from a place of overwhelm, from a place of reactivity,
Mm,
from a place of fear. No wonder we do that, because there's such dire happenings in the world right now. No wonder we do that. But if we can, as you say, go internally, cultivate some sense of capacity, some sense of stillness, equanimity, then we take that out into the world. And it's a way of, the instructions in meditation are contemplate internally and externally.
mm,
And then internally, externally, we begin to understand it's the same. There's no difference. We're so
mm,
connected.
yeah.
And so we want to bring our wise action from this internal seclusion that we do
Mm,
into the world, because
mm.
there's no separation.
Right. And somehow we create separation to escape, like, you
Mm.
know, zone out. Maybe meditation is zoning out and I can disconnect. And so there is, as you're sharing, there's a level of, for those who haven't explored mindfulness or meditation, at first it may be challenging. Doesn't mean for everyone, but you're turning to something. Like, even you mentioned you were pulled by wanting to deal with suffering, anxiety. What was that like for you as you began getting to notice those things that maybe you didn't want to notice?
Yes. Oh, it's so important to address this. What happened for me that first time was that the teachings invited me to pay attention to the direct experience, the direct sensations of this body and breath.
Hmm.
And what that did for me for a moment, and then another moment, was it interrupted the story of stress and the story of the thoughts in my mind about the anxiety and depression I was feeling. Now, the thoughts were
Mm,
things like, this will never go away. Why didn't I do this when I was younger and deal with this depression then? What is going to happen to me in the future? So those thoughts about, and I can't do it, I can't get the energy up, whatever the anxious thoughts are
right.
that a person that I was having, I had not a lot of them. When we live our lives thinking of those things, trying to fix, trying to find a way out, that's challenging. And
Mm.
so, what mindfulness can do is help us come into just this moment without all that story, without all that proliferation. Just this moment with this breath, this body,
Mm.
these feet on the floor, this weight of the body in the chair. And what that can do for a moment is give us a moment of respite, a moment of refuge.
Right.
And in that moment, the whole nervous system can resettle. The whole nervous
Mm.
system can reset from the anxiety, from the ramped up energy, from the emergency setting, from the red alert of those thoughts that have been
Mm.
spinning. So we get a little respite. And when we have a respite with just this sensation, and it's okay, yeah, just this breath, and it's okay to be here, just this weight of the body on the chair, just these feet on the floor. The
Mm.
nervous system gets a message that just this moment, it's okay to be here.
Mm.
And so then the thoughts don't activate the amygdala and the hippocampus and uh, those hormones in the body, which create stress and which ramp us up, put us on red alert.
Mm.
Just that moment, we're interrupting
Mm.
those thoughts, which put the system on red alert and helps the whole nervous system to calm down
Mm.
just for a moment. And then the thoughts might spin again, and then we come back again just to these feet on
Mm.
the floor. We can do it just right now together.
Mm.
Just the weight of the body on the chair, just this breath. And just for that moment, we're letting the system know again, it's okay to be here just now. It's all
Mm.
right. And the whole system can reset.
Mm.
And so that small little moment of respite, that small little moment of refuge can build moment by moment
Mm.
and let us know that in this moment there can be refuge. And we help the system learn that we don't need to spin out all the time in the thinking. So we begin to notice we have a choice about the thinking. We have a
Mm.
choice. I have a choice about those anxious thoughts, about those depression thoughts. I have a choice. We're not pushing them away. We're not trying to stop them at all. But there's
Right.
a difference we start to learn between thinking the thought and noticing the thought. We're
Mm.
thinking about the thought, noticing, oh, this is an anxiety thought.
Mm.
This is a depression thought. And in that moment, we're not thinking the thought. We're not caught in the thought. We're
Mm.
able to see that thought more clearly and not be in it, caught in it
Yeah.
so much. So it's like a train, that goes by or boats on the river. There might be the anxiety boat and the depression boat and the worry boat. And without noticing them, we jump on them and just go down the river on them. When we notice with mindfulness, oh, that's the anxiety boat. And can I come just back to this moment, this breath, this body? In a way, we get off the anxiety boat just for a minute, just for a moment. We can rest on the shore. And even if we're on the anxiety boat and we can't quite get off, but we know we're on the anxiety boat, that's more helpful to the system than not knowing we're on the anxiety boat
Yeah.
and being caught down there. And I've been on that anxiety boat for, days, weeks, months, years
Mm.
without knowing. And this is a way of knowing. When something's known like that, we can step off the anxiety boat even for a moment. And this is the one of the initial things we notice in mindfulness so we can begin to have a choice. But what you're saying also is that when we do slow down, we notice those anxiety thoughts more clearly.
Mm.
And can seem when we start to calm down with mindfulness, with meditation, it can seem like those thoughts are louder and
Right. Because
stronger.
you're becoming aware of them now.
Yes, yes, yes. So we can take heart and know that if they start to seem louder, that's skillful mindfulness
Mm.
because we're paying more attention to how it is and we're not driven unconsciously by those thoughts anymore.
Mm.
That's a big moment to celebrate.
What a beautiful metaphor you shared, and like you the visual, and it counters sometimes the approach of I'm gonna push it down, or I'm gonna cover up those feelings, whether it's let's spend more time on Instagram, and all these tools can be beautiful and supportive, but when we're using things to cover up feelings, whatever it is. It just we all have habit patterns that can help us, and those that don't. But I think most of us may end up doing that, whether overeating or whatever it is, just to cover up those feelings.
Absolutely, we do.
And so here is a way that you're naming of there's another way of to be with how things are with the anxiety or the depressive thoughts. It's not about let's eliminate them right this
Yeah.
second. It's about how to be with them differently. And
Yes,
that's what I'm hearing. Yeah.
that's a beautiful way of saying it. And
Yeah.
we've all tried to stop those thoughts. We all know.
Yeah.
How does it work to try to stop those thoughts? It does not. The more we push, the stickier they get.
Yeah.
And so this is a radically different relationship, as you're pointing to, a radically different relationship with thoughts. Those thoughts that we often think are the enemy.
Mm.
And we begin to learn that directed thought, we can direct our thought to certain
Mm.
aspects of our experience that are helpful. And we begin to learn that we don't need to stop thinking in order to have peace.
See, that's a powerful transformative share. We don't have to stop thinking to find peace. I think that a lot of people think, no, I got to stop thinking. I got to eliminate thought. And then I can sit in nothing for hours, pure nothing,
Yeah.
nothing, nothing, nothing. Then I can be at peace.
Yes, exactly. That's so true. It's so true. It's a big, huge misconception, really. Yes, this
Mm.
practice, we can have peace even when those thoughts are there. The peace is in our relationship to them. And that's
Mm.
radical because then our peace does not depend on external conditions being a certain way or even internal conditions being a certain way. Our
Mm.
peace does not depend on thoughts going away, certain thoughts going away. We
Mm.
really begin to have this peace even in the midst of things.
Mm.
That's huge.
That's very hopeful,
Mhm,
right? That's huge.
mhm.
And that gives us a chance to find another, a new relationship with
Yeah,
this, like you say, a new relationship to this.
yeah,
And but there might be a stage where we might not like these thoughts if someone is just beginning the journey, or even after months or years. Sometimes we get caught. I mean, who doesn't? I
of
do.
course,
And
of
it's like,
course.
oh, not liking something, right? Like, oh, why am I thinking this, or why am I feeling this? I don't like this feeling. I don't want this feeling. And now we're adding another layer. Like this just happened to me yesterday, right?
Yeah,
And I was like, oh, I presented something. I was like, oh, I could have added a little more of this. I should have done this. But wait a minute, actually I did the best, and with the conditions, and that was it.
that was it. Oh, oh, that was it. So that's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful because you're bringing such compassion and
Mm,
kindness and gentleness and generosity and
mm.
non-judgment to your own self. Is that what I've heard just right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like there's the part that I have to keep working with, that it's kind of, oh, you could have done better.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like
You named something.
yeah.
That is the part that's for all of us that we need to keep working with, isn't it?
Mm.
You know what? I have to tell you, I love working with self-judgment. Because because there's because it's such a powerful area of
Mm.
transformation. And can I tell you a story about self-judgment?
Please, yes.
I worked in the self-help area for a decade before I
Mm.
found mindfulness, and we worked a lot with self-talk and a lot with self-judgment.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we would do affirmations, or we would identify the self-talk and try to replace it with something positive. And I
Mm.
think those strategies are powerful.
Mm.
But tell me if this is true for you. What I realized is that they were all working from the underlying assumption that I had to fix something about myself.
Yes.
Yeah, something's
Yeah.
wrong. I have
Yeah.
to fix this self-judgment.
Yeah.
And so, what mindfulness does is when I found that practice, I was realized there's nothing to fix. Nothing. And we bring this great compassion, as you identified, to ourselves, but also nothing to fix. And so then we bring that different relationship even to self judgment. And so I used to
Mhm.
think we had to get rid of self judgment in order to be
Yeah.
happy. So here's my story of practice with this.
Hmm.
I was
Yeah.
I was on retreat one time, and retreat practice is a good way to support our practice, day longs or weekends and longer. And so I was on retreat and I was working with self-judgment.
Hmm.
And self-judgment would come up and I would just name it with mindfulness. Oh, this is
Hmm.
self-judgment. And I would feel where it was in the body and it felt like a stab in the heart.
Hmm.
We'll each have our own experience of self-judgment. So we name it. I named it with mindfulness. Oh, this is self judgment. And then I brought kindness in, just as you brought it in earlier. And I
Hmm.
had a little, actually, the hand, when I put the hand on the heart where the stab felt, that
Yeah.
was kind because I was just offering this kind,
Hmm.
warm gesture. That's a way of offering kindness to ourselves. And then I had a little phrase I would say, may I be free of self judgment.
Hmm.
That phrase needs to be said in a way that allows the self judgment. So it can't, if we say it in a way it says, may I be free of this
Yeah.
self judgment, we're adding judgment of the self judgment on top of the
Yeah. Then
judgment.
it becomes aggression towards the self judgment.
Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
right there, we want to bring kindness in towards the self judgment. And we can still be free. We can still want to be free. We can still prefer to not
Hmm.
have self judgment. But in that moment, we need to deeply befriend the fact that it's here and
Hmm.
not add ill will on top of it. And so that phrase, may I be free of self
Hmm.
judgment, just a little wish, a kind wish. And then the self-judgment kept rising, kept rising. Nothing seemed like it was happening, nothing. But every time it would rise, I'd say, "Oh, may I be free." In that moment,
Hmm.
there was a little respite from self-judgment right
Hmm.
in the midst. And so that over
Yeah.
time helped. And so one day I was walking across the dining room in the retreat center, and I had some food and pickled beets on my plate.
Mhm.
I love pickled beets, and this retreat center had pickled beets. So I was walking back to find a place to sit, and I tripped, and the food on my plate started to slide
Uh-oh.
off, and I could see where the whose lap the beets were gonna land in. I could see the trajectory of those beets, and I don't know how I did it, but I got my plate under the beets, and I caught them. And I was standing there in the middle of the dining hall, and the first thought that rose was, "Good catch." Second thought, everybody saw you.
Oh.
Everybody's gonna remember that. Third thought, I just laughed inside. We were in
Mm.
silence, but I laughed. I said, what would I do without you?" Talking to the self-judgment voice, "You're endlessly entertaining." And so over time, those small moments of mindfulness plus kindness towards self-judgment, rather
Mm.
than pushing away, over time, those changed my relationship to it. And so
Mm.
the self-judgment still rose, the thoughts rose, but I had a different relationship. They didn't catch me. They didn't catch me in the same way. And it will rise all the time. It's conditioned. Now when I do something new, for example, I can pretty much guarantee there'll be a self-judgment thought afterwards. You can anticipate they're conditioned. They're not you. They're not who you are. They're conditioned thoughts. And we develop a different relationship. So I expect they'll be here till the end of my life. But
Mm.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There's a peace with those conditioned thoughts.
See, there's this beautiful wording, may I be free from self judgment. The way you said it as well, and how you're describing it, is you can be free from self judgment even when it's there. And I think that's quite radically different than I will only be free,
Yeah,
or free means it's no longer there. I eliminate it,
yeah.
it's gone. Now I'm free. And you're saying, no, you can be free in the middle of it.
You got it.
Yeah.
That you described it perfectly.
Yeah. You just took me to an experience that I had at a retreat as well, and this was in Burma, and I did a 6 month retreat in a forest monastery there.
Beautiful.
And after, I can't remember how long it was, but there's a lot of hours, a lot of days where I'm like, I think I've had enough. I want to get out of here.
Yeah.
And so there was a period of walking, and I think my mind is like, "Ooh, I'm tired of the same place of walking. Let's find somewhere more interesting." Like I was looking for novelty, right? And I went further away where we're supposed to, and I thought no one's gonna notice that. There's a lot of people, and I found a spot, and it's just like no one around. I was like, oh, this is great. And I'm feeling, oh, this is amazing, doing my walking. Why don't they let us be here? Like, this is. And next thing I know, one of the monks is slowly coming towards me. I was like, oh no, I'm busted. And he just comes right next to me, and uh, in that moment, like, I think I had to remind myself, you didn't do anything wrong. It's okay. They have rules, but you should just follow it next time. Like, I was telling myself that. And he said, he was very kind and used it as a teaching moment, really. And he said, freedom is not a place you go to. I'm still digesting on that one. Freedom is not a place you go to. Wow.
That's
Okay. Okay.
Thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful.
I, I got it. Like, that moment, I was like, I actually didn't know I was doing that, because I was pretty convinced I'm gonna feel so much better if I just find a new place to do this meditation, walking meditation. It's like, and I still catch myself like every week doing things. I'm like, oh, let me just get to this, and then I'll be free. Wait a minute,
Yeah.
I don't have to wait to then.
Beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm going to remember that. That happens to, yes, to me also weekly, daily,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
hourly. But to remember freedom is here,
Yeah.
not a place you go. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. The teaching sometimes can surprise us when they show up or how they show up. And
Yeah.
you said something earlier too, which is important. Um, sometimes it seems like nothing's happening.
Yeah.
Like, nothing's happening.
Yes.
Why am I even, like, I'm too busy in life. Keep taking time to sit and meditate. Like,
Yeah.
isn't there like a little quicker technique we can do? And I get that sometimes. So how do you approach that when someone shares this? Like, you know, this is really nice for people who have time,
Mhm.
but I just do quick things, like, give me a 1 minute strategy to fix it. I don't want to sit for 20 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes. What?
Yes.
How do you approach that?
Well, in some ways, it's okay to do short periods of
Mm,
practice. In some ways, it's okay to do 5 minutes a day, so that it doesn't
mm,
have to be long. But every time you do even a short period of practice, consistency is
mm,
perhaps more important. Consistency is an important piece because we
mm,
we're watering the seeds of wholesome states when we bring our
mm.
mindfulness or kindness. So we're watering the seeds, and like all the plants, beautiful plants in your office, for example, we need to water them consistently,
Yeah.
even a little bit every day. If we watered them only once every 6 months, a whole bunch, or only once every six, they're not going to grow.
Mm.
And so we're watering the seeds of these wholesome states in our own hearts and minds, and so it's helpful to remember that the power of the practice isn't necessarily in how it feels in that moment. It's in the
Right.
intention. And that intention builds over time. And we don't know necessarily when it'll flower.
Mm.
I say that. And then also, when I was doing those small moments of, oh, this is self judgment, may I be kind? In that moment, there was a fruit. In that
Yes.
moment, there was the taste of kindness and freedom, because I was
Mm.
free from the ill will of the self judgment, and of disliking the self judgment just for that moment. So,
Mm.
so perhaps in answer to your question, consistency is perhaps more important than doing a whole
Mm.
bunch of practice, although 20 minutes and 45 minutes of practice is very good. But
Yeah.
to, even if you do a little bit, to notice any small bit of wholesomeness in there.
Mm.
Eh, Why did you start this in the first place? Like what's the little tiny fruit there? What happens
Mm.
when you stop for just a minute and settle in to the body and the breath?
Right.
Let yourself know the wholesomeness of that. Really know it. And when we know the small wholesomenesses in that way,
Mm.
then they'll grow and our system will get more magnetized for them. And then
Mm.
over time, it'll be easier to sit.
Mm.
So I think there is some wholesome effort needed in the beginning,
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
wholesome intention. But then as we pay attention to the small fruits, the mind can then want to sit
Mm.
or because it feels good.
Yeah. And as you're describing this, the wholesome states for those who might be new to this, how would they know it's wholesome? So there's a feeling good, or
Mm.
what would you say, which is might be different? They go, oh, I think this is wholesome.
Oh, that's such a good
Mm.
question. I'm going to offer something and then I'd be interested in what you have to say as
Yes.
well. So, the very first foundation of the of mindfulness, the very
Mm.
first place we pay attention is in the body.
Yeah.
And so we get to know closely what the sensations, direct sensations are like. And then when we build on top of that thoughts and emotions, we can sense in the body what those thoughts and emotions, what impact they're
Mm.
having in the body. And so, for example, anxiety, I know has like a very jaggedy energy.
Mm.
I know that calmness has a kind of a settled energy. And so we
Mm.
begin to feel in the body what feels like it leads us towards more struggle, what feels like it agitates the system, what builds the
Mm.
jangly energy, what feeds the anxiety more, like watching lots and lots of news will feed
Mhm.
the jangly energy.
Mm.
And spending a minute or two in mindfulness of the body can calm. So we
Yeah.
begin to, the vocabulary of the body is how we
Mm.
know. Does it feel like it leads to more struggle or does it feel like it leads to more peace? And the way we know is what's the impact here?
Mm. Oh, so beautifully said. Does it lead to more struggle or more peace? And
Mhm.
even as you're speaking, you're pointing to the body, your body. So there's a direct knowing. This is not conceptual. I think sometimes when we approach the practice, whether someone's new or has been practicing for a while, we may get caught in concepts like, how do I get to give me the formula to arrive at, and what let's like, what does it look like? And it's wait a minute, it's a direct, even as you're pointing, I'm noticing myself right now, I'm pointing to my own body as well. So it's a, like, how does it feel like? So there's something about connecting with ourself and getting to know directly what happens when I'm in a state of agitation,
Yes.
or I just listen to my mind as I was doing some work, like check email again. And when I do, when I didn't need to, how does that feel in the body?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Just an example. Yeah.
That's a great example. It's a
Yeah.
wonderful example. And the more we can tune in there,
Yeah.
the more that's our guide.
This is so rich, just like the beautiful picture. For those of you who are listening just by audio, there's a beautiful picture behind you. And was that a picture you said you've taken, or is it's a picture of location near you
A
of a
friend of
forest?
mine, a photographer, Sherry Westmoreland, took that picture, and it's a
Yeah.
picture of a forest on the West Coast in BC.
Forest, yeah. And the reason I mention it, because it feels so like there's such richness and depth, just how I'm feeling from your shares. It's like it's a
Mhm.
forest of knowledge that we've entered the forest.
Mm.
And I'm wondering too, describing the differences between forms of meditation, and sometimes they get jumbled together.
Yep.
Like let's visualize, and visualization can be very helpful, or so mindfulness meditation can be confused sometimes with a lot of things, or
Yes.
mantra meditation. And what's how do you describe mindfulness meditation?
Well, I have a kind of a short way of describing it that I
Yes.
often bring in. It's a mindfulness is paying attention internally and externally with curiosity, kindness, openness in order to respond wisely to our experience. So that's my
Mm-hmm.
kind of shorthand. Sometimes the mindful response can be quite receptive, like we want to just rest back and receive what's here, receive what's being known in the body. Sometimes it can be very active. We want to actively, but not with aggression, not with striving or pushing, but actively cultivate or turn the attention to something wholesome that can support the mind. So there's that wise response can be very varied, but we want to be able to see clearly what's happening first
Mm-hmm.
with kindness, curiosity, and openness. That is not pushing it away or trying to make it different. And then that's in order to respond wisely. So that's one. And then
What a
within that, there's lots of skillful means in the
mm.
wisdom part. Sometimes we do use visualization, but
Yeah.
not in the kindness meditation. We visualize other
Yeah.
beings and we send our care to them.
Yeah.
Sometimes we chant, but it's in the service of this wise response and
Mm.
this wisdom that can lead to, as you said, freedom being here now.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to quickly thank you for stopping by and watching this content. It truly means the world to me that you're interested in creating positive change. I also want to invite you to join our amazing community. I have free events online about mindfulness, mindfulness based stress reduction, laughter, as well as retreats that you can do from the comfort of your own home. And are you ready for this? Self paced program that you can do about mindfulness and stress reduction. So you can join the newsletter below to stay up to date on all these goodies. And if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and press that button. It really helps me to keep this content going and reach out to more guests. Thank you so much again, and may you continue enjoying watching this episode. This beautiful definition that he shares about this wise response. When we're practicing, we're working on that wise response of noticing our reactivity to a thought or to emotion, or like knee hurting, or do I move it? Do I not move it? Like all all these like what's wise for my body right now, like that. And I can see so clearly as you're describing, but I would love to hear your take on it in terms of, is that the foundation for this work to help us in this world that's going through a lot of challenges, whether it's climate change and wars and injustices. And I mean, there's a
Mhm.
lot, and it may lead us to want to just be spinning more and being more upset and what's wrong with the world, and get into those mind states, which may not help us in healing.
Yeah, they really don't help us,
Yeah.
do they? And I will say until maybe about 5 years ago, I was really in despair and overwhelmed
Mm,
about a couple of areas of life, but one of them was the climate crisis. And then we can add in all the violence in the world, the wars in the world, the racism, homophobia, transphobia,
yeah.
all of those, sexism, all of those harmful patterns in the world. And so, how do we, as you're saying, meet this world that's on fire? I think that our practice does offer a profound doorway if we can cultivate the simple practice of interrupting the thought train
Mm,
towards catastrophe, which is so easy to get on. And what happens then is I fall into overwhelm. But if I can come back simply to being able to be steady in the midst of things, in
mm,
this meditation, in this body, in this moment, then I can carry that into the world and that capacity to see what's wise in the world. How
mm.
can I act in the world? We have a climate group now
Mm,
in on the prairies here in Canada, where
mhm,
that this is our intention, is to cultivate the practices, the Buddhist practices
mm.
that can build resilience, that can build steadiness and support wise action in the world. So we're not
Ah,
an action group, although we connect each time to an action group, and we're not an education group. We know it's dire.
oh.
We are a group that builds these equanimous resilient skills that then can support our action in the world. Otherwise, I find myself burned out and overwhelmed and I can't help. I
Mm,
can't engage in the world. So
mm.
I think it's a very important and helpful building block.
Hmm. So you're also naming capacity, right? Like taking action, you know, the group you're part of, knowing what the intention is, what's the capacity, how much we take on, what and how can we get involved, right? Like for some of us, like this is a problem, but you know, there's a hopelessness. Like when it's like there's nothing I can do. Like how,
Yep,
what am I going to do make any difference here? Like, and I think that mindset and a lot of
yep,
things keep us
yep,
stuck, and then
totally.
just we become spectators
Yeah,
of like and fuel the storyline like
yeah,
this is bad and this is bad and this is bad and this is bad and this is bad,
yep.
and we forget like is there anything good anymore?
Yes, yes. Maybe two teachings I received, one from Thich Nhat Hanh and one from Venerable
Mm.
Analya, have helped me a lot in that.
Mm.
The first is that Thich Nhat Hanh said his greatest fear was giving into despair, and he was one of the greatest climate activists in our world. That was his greatest fear. So if we fear that, and if we sometimes fall into that, we're in good company.
Mm.
And how he worked with that was he cared for it in his own heart. So we turn directly again as we cultivate the capacity to be with the direct sensations in the body without pushing or pulling away. So there's tingling in the feet, there's pressure in the feet right now
Mm.
when they're on the floor. There's a weight in the body as it's sitting on the chair. As you and I and everyone listening can feel into that. Oh, and
Mm.
then maybe in the body there's a pleasant sensation, an unpleasant sensation. Can we know it directly? I
Ah.
know I have a back which gives me some pain sometimes.
Mm.
Can I build on? Can I sense the direct sensations there? Oh, it's about the size of a toonie. It's quite hot, but then the rest of the back is quite steady. It's quite calm.
Ah.
So we begin to be able to bring this steadiness with direct experience in the body, even to painful, even to
Mm.
unpleasant experiences. And this is what Thich Nhat Hanh does, or has shown us. We
Yeah.
can bring the steadiness. We begin with relatively neutral sensations in the body, tingling in the
Mm.
hands, the breath. We bring that steadiness then to pleasant and unpleasant experiences,
Mm.
and we can be with them with more and more steadiness. And so we
Mm.
bring it right to our despair. Ah, this is despair. And we hold it and be with it the same way I was with self judgment, without judging
Mm.
that despair. We hold it, and especially when we hold that in community, that can make it so that it can build our capacity to be
Yeah.
with those difficult states and not have to turn away in overwhelm. And so
Yeah.
we build gradually the capacity to be with those difficult experiences of fear around climate. So then we can say, I
Mm.
have fear, but it doesn't overwhelm us.
Right.
And so we begin to build our capacity to be with those very difficult emotions with
Mm.
steadiness. And that's what the world needs. And that's what everyone around us needs. So if we can be the person who can do that, we
Mm.
can help build capacity in our community. And then we can move forward together.
Mm.
Yes. So that's Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching, that we don't have to fear despair. It's part of this healthy
Mm.
response to what's going on. But we
Mm.
need to be able to, I say, befriend it, be
Yeah.
with it without pushing it away. Let it, in fact, be a way that we cultivate the steadiness of heart and mind. But then we can act. So that's Thich Nhat Hanh.
Yeah.
And then Venerable Analya has a
Mm.
beautiful teaching. He said this in retreat I was on with him. Now, I want to say this, and it shocked me. He said, "It's not our job to fix the world." And inside myself, I thought, wait a minute.
What? Yeah, yeah.
And then he went on to say, "It's our job to embody that which would heal the world." So it's not our job to fix it, but it's our
Oh.
job to embody that which would fix it. And so when I feel like
Huh.
into the thought that I have to fix the world, what happens? I fall into overwhelm and despair. How
Hmm.
can I fix the world? That thought and approach conditions overwhelm and despair. But when I feel into my job is to embody that which would fix the world or that which would heal the world, my heart
Hmm.
rushes in. I can embody that.
Hmm.
I can embody that. And so a shift in what we feel our job is,
Yeah.
can then empower us to do what is ours to do, to
Hmm.
act. And so we can all embody that which would fix or heal the world. That's doable
Hmm.
in our small interactions with each other. And this can build our capacity to be able to offer that in wider circles and to
Hmm.
move into action that we want to move into rather than being stuck in despair, which again is not something to judge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
How beautiful and how empowering it is. What a paradigm shift, right? From the despair that can feel so crushing.
yeah,
And then if we're just stuck in that despair about the world and then it's spiraling our own mood, spiraling our own thoughts,
mhm,
emotions, and that has a negative ripple effect on those around us.
mhm,
And like how's that helping?
yes,
Right? So there's this shift, and you're naming Thich Nhat Hanh, and as you're sharing this beautiful teaching as well, made me think of his, no mud, no lotus, right?
mhm,
Like so the way you're describing being with despair, it's bringing kindness and lovingness to it, using that despair as an opportunity to learn or grow from,
mhm,
not again to crush it or belittle ourselves
mhm,
or just swim in it.
mhm.
It's like to be with it, to let
Yeah.
us help us actually.
Yes, and this is where, there's a beautiful teaching called Touching the Earth from the Buddha's teachings, where the Buddha had, on
Mm,
the night of his awakening, had all these difficult states, difficult mind states coming towards him. And he said,
mhm.
"I see you."
Yeah.
And then he turned and touched the earth and asked for help. And there's a couple ways to understand that. One is that he saw the despair or whatever it is, we can put ourselves in his shoes, that we see the difficult states with mindfulness, with
Mm,
steadiness. I see you. And that's the seeing clearly. But then the Buddha
yeah.
didn't stick around and fight with it. So then he turned and touched the earth of we can
Mm,
understand that as touching a nourishment. And so sometimes when we
right.
work with despair, we need to see it. Oh, this is despair. And then we intentionally need to turn and touch something nourishing.
Mm.
And this supports the system in building resilience so that the next time despair comes, we're more resilient. And
Ah,
so this is seen in the templates of somatic experiencing, for example, a therapy that works with
right.
trauma. They talk about identifying the trauma or the difficult state, touching it briefly
Mm,
in and know the direct sensations in the body, and then turn to what they call a resource, something nourishing that will
mhm.
then help the nervous system to balance. And that's how we digest difficult experiences.
Right.
Small bits and back and forth between the difficulty and the nourishment. And so we can see
Mm,
this template in the touching the earth story, in trauma therapies like somatic experiencing, and then in our teachers' experiences. For example, Bob Brown, who is an Australian politician,
mm,
first openly gay parliamentarian in Australia,
mhm.
recently had a documentary made about him called, I think it's The Giants, and about his climate work, saving the
Oh,
forest in Australia.
what is it called again?
The Giants,
The Giants. Okay.
yes. He said this is how he works with not falling into depression, finding joy, so that's the nourishment, and then acting.
Finding joy in acting.
Yeah.
Mm.
So isn't that interesting combination? Finding joy and then acting. So finding
Mm,
touching nourishment And then that's what supports the capacity to act. And so this is part of our mindfulness wise response. Sometimes we need to intentionally turn the mind towards nourishment, towards joy. And this
Mm.
sustains the work, the difficult work. And
Mm.
this is how communities who faced challenging situations have survived for centuries,
Yeah.
have continued to flourish over centuries. They know how to
Mm.
touch nourishment. The Métis community that I'm a part of,
Yeah.
who've been facing colonialism for 150 plus years,
Yeah.
they know, this community knows how to touch the quiet joy, the nourishment of community, of
Mm.
gathering together, right in the midst of things.
Mm.
We just had a round dance here to commemorate Orange Shirt Day, which commemorates
Mhm.
the survivors of residential schools.
Yeah.
And so, right in the midst of this difficult reality, this pain of
Mm.
residential school, which has caused so much intergenerational trauma and suffering, right in the midst of that, we have speakers, Indigenous
Yeah.
speakers, speakers from churches who are also there to acknowledge the pain, and uh, lots of food, and round dance. So that the round dance is a just an affirmation of we're all in this together.
Hmm.
We affirm the teaching of interconnection, and the elders will say things like Eugene Arcand at one gathering said, "We're all here to lay down the shame and the guilt of
Oh,
residential school, speaking to all people."
yeah.
And so that nourishment of the teachings of
Mm.
interconnection, the nourishment of community, the nourishment of telling the truth of things, there's an alignment with that. All
Yeah.
those nourishments support our capacity to continue to be in the fire
Mm.
and show up the way that we can and the way we need to for
Mm.
ourselves, each other, and the planet.
So this is really vital. This nourishment you're naming, this nourishment of community, of wisdom, to keep fueling ourselves, to fuel moving forward and healing. Because if we're depleted, it's very hard to move forward in any journey. Can you say more about what is quiet joy?
I want to say there's three sources of quiet joy. Would that be helpful? I think helpful to
Yes,
know,
that'd be great.
right? This is from the suttas,
Mm.
the teachings of the Buddha. Three
Mhm.
sources of quiet joy that can nourish us. One is worldly joy.
Mhm.
And so this is the joy of the senses, of what we hear, the music, the food we eat, the sights we see,
Mm.
nature, when we see a beautiful sight in nature. All of these are worldly joys, and they lift the heart.
Mm.
Second source of joy is the what we can call unworldly joys or spiritual joys or inner joys.
Mm.
These are joys of the practice. Joys like calming, the sense of, when we do a little bit of a meditation, there can be a calming.
Yeah.
This joy, or the inner qualities of kindness, of
Mm.
compassion, of equanimity, those inner qualities which we can touch, which we can turn to. In a
Mm.
way, compassion and kindness are always choices, always inner qualities of nourishment that we can turn to.
Mm.
Other inner qualities, the joy, quiet joy is another. Joy in another's joy is another inner one of these inner
Mm.
qualities that we can turn to intentionally. Or gratitude in any way, gratitude for anything that you appreciate. What does that do inside? It can
Mm.
lift the heart. So, these inner qualities that we can turn to is the second source of joy.
Mm.
And then the third source of joy is what you pointed to earlier, that freedom is not somewhere we go.
Mm.
Freedom is in our own hearts. This capacity the heart has to know that we can let go of searching elsewhere,
Yeah.
that it's right here, this happiness. And as we get more and more familiar with how to find that,
Mm.
you found it in Burma.
Mhm.
found that you didn't have to go to the beautiful spot in the garden.
Right.
I found it with self judgment. I don't have to make self
Mm,
judgment go away. Peace is right here. And this is the greatest treasure
mm,
and the greatest nourishment. And so these are three sources of joy. And
mm.
I'll tell a story about how they can support each other.
Yes.
I got a phone call once. I was here at home and I got a phone call and it was upsetting. And I felt like I needed to know the answer about how to respond perfectly. And I didn't.
Mm,
And so I went out in the back alley and I started to do some walking meditation. And I just continued to feel agitated. And I stopped in the alley and I just said, is there any quiet joy here?
mm.
And I felt the sun on my face. That's a worldly joy.
Mm,
As I felt the sun on my face, I felt a calming inside. That's an unworldly joy.
mm.
And then as I felt the calming inside, I let go of the clinging to the thought that I had to know what to do.
Ah.
And as I let go of that, everything softened. And I realized I didn't have to know. I could just make the phone call, the next phone call, without
Yeah.
knowing, without having to have the answer, without needing to be the
Yeah.
expert. And so that's said to be the greatest treasure is
Mm.
this joy of being able to let go of trying to control, have an agenda, figure things out. And then I moved, I could make the
Right.
phone call and it unfolded in a different way.
Mm.
And so these three joys can support each other. They're all important. And it's important to know that the worldly joy is more unreliable, we could say. The worldly joys of the
Mm.
senses will come and go. Inner joys are more reliable. We can always turn to
Mm.
kindness and compassion. And then
Mm.
this third joy of this letting go, this release, is understood as one of the deepest joy
Mm.
that we can learn how to cultivate.
Mm.
Venerable Analya describes our practice as a gradual refinement of joy. And a colleague of mine, Rachel Lewis, says that, we're all pleasure seekers. We just learn to seek more and more reliable pleasure.
Ah.
So
Mm.
those are three sources of joy that we can keep our radar out for.
Mm.
Accessible
Yeah.
every day, every moment.
Yeah.
These become accessible. There's a worldly joy I've learned in just sitting. I come into just sitting, and there's a kind of a simplicity. Just and we can find a way of tuning into the pleasantness of just sitting, the pleasantness of
Yeah.
the breath. That's a worldly joy.
Mm.
So it's accessible. Before I met this teaching, I had trouble finding joy. Sometimes I couldn't find it. Now it's everywhere.
So really provided these teachings, and regardless if someone is a Buddhist or not a Buddhist, this is what's so beautiful about it.
Yes,
It's like it's a human
a
capacity
human capacity.
to connect with. Like here's this question that you were bringing up from the teachings. Like, is there joy in this moment? It's it just even in the quality of a question, there's a turning to exploring, turning to go, what might I not have noticed like 2 seconds ago, being caught in my mind about whatever these bills I gotta pay or whatever it is. It's just like just this moment, like what might be here, and just that is bringing us to the present moment. And it doesn't mean we are running away from bills to pay or things to address. Actually, that's recharging us.
Yes,
Now that I took this moment
yes,
to nurture, well, how you shared it so beautiful, to nurture myself, to fuel myself. Now I can then go deal and not react to the bill or to the email or so it's not avoiding things. It's actually fueling us
yes,
to approach things. And I think
yes.
that is really important how you share that.
Yes, you got it.
Yeah.
Absolutely true. Absolutely. And it's okay if we settle into the present moment to actually intentionally bring something in that's
Mm.
nourishing. Like we can remember something,
Hmm.
or we can think about something in the future, and then that can, the memory of it or the anticipation can be a nourishment that then we feel in the body in this moment.
Yeah.
And then we let go. of the image, but we feel it in this present moment.
You know, how you said it right now just remind me of something happened this morning. This morning, which is I had a moment where I felt like a future joy. Then I noticed, am I getting caught and like waiting for then, which is actually I'm in just the process of getting my first puppy. I've always had birds, and so I'm like, okay, so uh, who do I connect with? Do I go here? I'm looking at all the different breeds, and there's one that I'm really interested in, and I had a moment of I just had a smile. I'm like just like being with this beautiful dog and just loving the connection, taking care of this dog taking care of me. Like I had this beautiful and then I had a moment going, wait a minute, hold on, just know that I can't wait until that future moment, which might be 3 months from now, I don't know, or 6 months, whenever I get that dog, right? So not postponing it
Right.
and not getting attached to only then I'll find joy. So it was a little like I had to kind of really notice, like feel the joy and no, don't get too hooked up on like I'll only find this joy later. But actually, I feel it right now. I was actually going, yeah, I was going down the stairs, and in that moment, I was like, ah, oh, feels so good.
Oh, that's so great.
Oh, and don't wait till then.
Great. That's so great. That's wonderful. That's perfect. That little phrase, "Don't wait till then."
Yeah,
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 yeah. It
yeah,
takes that skillfulness to not get caught up in the longing and the wanting, but to really notice it's here now. Don't wait
yeah,
till then. There's a bit of it, there's some skill there,
yeah.
in making that little shift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But becoming aware of like, oh, I'm starting to get caught of like, ah, I can't wait
Yeah.
till then. I can't wait. Then I'll be like, wait,
Yeah.
no, just feel it now. I can feel the joy right now.
That's it, that's it, that's it.
Yeah.
It's so important to catch that, to catch
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Most often we don't catch it. And
Yeah.
then we get into the longing and the, "Oh, I can't wait," and we get that's where we live. We live in the
Yes.
longing. But you are
Right.
living in the joy.
I've always just living for the future. And
Yes.
that's actually what led me to the practice is
Yeah,
constant dissatisfaction in my life. Never happy with whatever I have, whatever I got. Always like when I get this, when I get that. So
yeah,
that still kind of shows itself up in my life, and I have to notice it, and
yeah.
I catch it more often than before. That's for sure.
That's so great. It's so great. So you know the pattern well, and you can catch
Oh yeah, it's an old friend.
it.
Yeah, yeah. And I try not to get upset when it shows up, but sometimes like again. I thought you're gone, friend. You're back.
Yeah.
Yeah, really beautiful. I have a couple more things I'm really curious about. I actually have so many things, so might be another podcast. But a couple of things I'm curious about: the connection to nature,
Mhm.
the healing power of nature, and support of mindfulness. And can you say a little more about that? Nature.
Nature is the great
Mm,
teacher for me, and we forget that we're part of nature.
mm,
And nature is really just a huge teacher of freedom. So let's do
mm.
a little experiment, you and
Yeah.
I and everyone who's listening. We were talking about memory and how that can help us even live in the moment.
Hmm.
Think of a place in nature that you like. So, everyone
Hmm.
listening, just imagine yourself in that place. Imagine what you see and hear, what the earth feels like beneath you, and let your body feel what it feels like in that place. And now find a word or two to describe what it feels like in the body, in the mind, or the heart,
Hmm.
what this feels like. And maybe you and I can offer a few words together.
Hmm. Alive and connected.
Ooh, beautiful,
Mm,
beautiful, relaxed and
mm,
spacious.
mm. Yeah.
And if we had a few more people here, we get all these different flavors of
Yeah.
these wholesome qualities that could describe relaxation in the body, spaciousness in the mind. Nature is really a teacher of all of these qualities.
Yeah.
Even when we just bring a memory, nature gives us this gift.
Yeah.
This can be understood as a taste of freedom in the practice, a
Mm.
taste of the wholesomeness of the practice. And so when we feel into mindfulness or meditation, our own meditation, we can begin to remember that this body is nature too. And so just sitting now with your earth body, this earth body sitting, many of the teachings will point to internal and external meditation. So we can
Mhm.
know that this body is earth body internally, and then we can reflect on the larger earth body, no separation. And this is one of the teachings of nature.
Yeah.
We can feel a sense of connection, as you said, a sense of unity, a sense of
Mhm.
oneness, no separation. And so
Mm.
nature can bring us into all the teachings of the practice. And
Mm.
we can begin to integrate that more intentionally into our sitting by sitting with this earth body. Just adding that one word in, sitting with this earth body,
Mm.
reminds us, oh, yeah, me too. I'm nature too. And as we tune into the gifts of external nature that can give us this sense of connection, spaciousness, we can begin to bring that attitude into our own internal environment so that
Mm.
body sensations and thoughts and emotions can be seen or held in this spaciousness. And so then we don't grab on so hard to the anxiety, to the depression, to the clinging, to what's next. We can rest more deeply here in this spacious, connected mind and
Mm.
heart. So for me, nature is the teacher
Yeah. And available.
and available.
Yeah, it's available to us.
And the more we can allow, yeah, so that's one, it's available to us.
Yeah.
And then for many of us, when we touch into nature like this, there can also be a sense of connection to the degradation of nature, the destruction of nature that's happening
Mm.
externally. So sometimes those things are hard to separate. When we can feel into this spaciousness, connection,
Mm.
again, that gives us the resilience to act in support of our of beloved nature externally.
Right.
So we still act from this place of the gifts that we receive from nature, and in a way that supports our love, our care, our capacity then
Mm.
to offer it back.
See that rippling kindness again.
Mhm.
So there's, there's almost this. I don't know if recycling is the right word, but it's more like taking in from nature and giving to others, taking in and giving, taking in, which is really what nature does. Like it takes, it give, like the trees, they take and they give.
That's right. And so
Yeah,
do
yeah,
we. We
yeah,
breathe with the trees all the time.
yeah, yeah,
We each take and give. There's Robin Wall Kimmerer calls what you're describing a
Mhm.
reciprocity.
Yeah.
Reciprocity with all of nature. This is our
Mm.
true nature, our nature of reciprocity.
So this can be available for, depending where the listeners you are, but maybe even a walk in the neighborhood if it feels accessible, if it feels
Mhm,
comfortable. Like it just,
mhm.
there might be a tree
Yeah,
there, right? There might be a flower
yeah,
there. Or how about the sky? I mean,
yeah.
the sky's going to be there even if there's no tree or flower. Right? How about the wind? How about like there's so many things that we can connect with
Beautiful,
that's available just
beautiful,
from here.
beautiful. I've loved that
Yeah.
you've named those
Yeah.
because they are very accessible.
Yeah.
And then if we're in a room that's totally dark and there's no
Mm.
window, or it's not, we can remember. We can remember, and that can make it present right now.
This is the bring forth the memory of it
Yeah.
to get the experience in the present moment.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we can abide in it in the present moment. There's a word that we can use to describe that being in the present moment with it, we abide with it.
Mm.
And let the memory fade and abide here in the sensations.
Ah, right. See, this is very different than clinging on to a memory.
Yes.
This is more, yeah, very different. This is bringing it forth to allow us a rising of some sensations or emotion, whatever it might be there, like whatever it is, it might be nothing, but just connecting to it and then letting go of that memory.
Yeah,
So we're not hanging on, attaching to. Ah, okay.
that's right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Really great clarification. And then we
yeah.
abide in the present moment.
Yeah.
Because,
Well, how, yeah. We're both using our hands. So if listeners are just listening rather than watching, if it's not on YouTube, listening in audio, um, we're both using our hand. Right now, I'm using my hand up and down. That feeling and letting go. It's like our body is communicating all of that as well.
yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Well, so many gems and gems. It's like a treasure box of wisdom that you're bringing, and I know we're at the end of our time, but is it still possible to share? I know you actually guided a practice.
Yeah,
Uh, um, Maybe another practice. Would that be possible?
sure. Yes. Would you like
Yes.
to? Should we rest into the earth body for a few minutes?
Yes.
Yeah. Then
Yes.
that helps us to rest into the earth element, to the stability in the body, helps to give some gravity in a way to our minds to be here with these
Yes.
body sensations. And then not only does that connect us to nature, but also connects us in the way we talked earlier in the podcast about just this sensation
Mm,
can
would
help
love that.
interrupt the proliferation of thought and help us settle into a little refuge here, just even for a moment,
Mm,
and lets us begin to develop that profound relationship of being with, befriending the body sensations just as they are,
mm,
begins to cultivate that way of being with experience, just as it is, steady, just this sensation, just as it is.
mm.
And that calms the nervous system, develops a capacity to be steady and settled and find wise response.
Would love that. Would love that. And if anyone you're operating machinery or driving or something, so maybe save that for later. But you can being aware of what you're doing, and you can always come back if you're not able to follow this moment.
Great.
Yeah.
And so we can rest in with, we can close our eyes if that's helpful, or you can leave your eyes open. And if you leave your eyes open, just let them gaze down at the floor, and that will help your system be less stimulated. And so settling in either case to a sense, just a simple, simple sense of the body sitting, the weight of the body on the chair. And sometimes, maybe I'll point to a few areas of quiet joy. Not everyone will resonate with all of them, but sometimes as we turn to this simple sense of the body sitting, there can be a little sense of relief at turning to the simplicity of this, of turning away for a moment from the busyness. So sometimes that can be there as we settle into just this body sitting, just the weight of the body on the chair. And feeling into this earth body, the steadiness of the body, the balance, the steadiness of the feet on the floor, on the earth. Just feeling into the contact of the feet on the floor. Sensing up the legs to the hips and noticing the hips as they are steady, grounded on the chair. And sensing the balance between the feet and the hips, this foundation of the posture that can provide balance, steadiness, stability in this earth body. And sensing the spine as it rises, supporting internally. The shoulders, the arms, hands. The back of the neck and the head and the face. And we can invite softening, inviting the face to soften and relax. Inviting the shoulders to soften. Inviting the belly to soften. So that we encourage a posture of ease, but also uprightness and awakeness. And we can notice the breath in the body as it comes in at the nostrils and fills the lungs, feeling the ribs expand and the chest rise. Feeling it in the belly. Feeling the sides of the body expanding against the arms. Feeling the back of the body expand against the chair, the clothing. Feeling the breath lift and lower the shoulders just a little bit. Sensing this breath as if it's like an ocean, gentle ocean swell, just rising and falling. Noticing that you can rest back and just receive the sensations of the breathing. Sometimes this ease, this resting back, this not trying hard to feel the breath can be a quiet joy. And we'll just for a few breaths let ourselves rest here in the breath or in the body sitting, whichever sensations feel most compelling to you, as an anchor, a place to bring the attention back to when the mind moves away to thinking. And the mind will notice that the attention will come back all by itself. No problem when the attention moves. And then just rest back into the body sitting or the sensations of the breath with ease, no trying hard necessary. And then just staying connected as best you can to the sensations of the breathing or the sensations of this whole body sitting or breathing, whichever anchor is most clearly felt for you. As we open our eyes, and as you open your eyes, see if you can stay connected to just the sensations of the body or the body breathing. And so you can tune in any time in the day. Just take 3 breaths and tune in to how the body feels sitting or standing, how the breath feels, the trunk of the body expanding, contracting. 3 breaths throughout the day to reconnect whenever you want to.
What a delightful practice.
Mm.
My body just sat, even like I just really sat in this chair as you described it, like felt a softening of the face, of the shoulder, and I wasn't trying to relax it. It was just like to start feeling my body, started noticing sensations in the belly and the trunk, and then thoughts came in. Just like when I hear your voice, like, oh yeah, coming back. But there's such a like sweet kindness and gentleness in your voice,
Mm.
and it's this sweetness of coming back. It's not a like uh, yeah, it's not a harsh comeback. It's like such a sweetness of like, oh, it's just gonna go, coming back. Like it's just delightful. Thank you for that beautiful practice.
You're welcome. Pleasure.
Can feel a quieting of a mind, and I love the addition you made as well, which is um, we can all do 3 breaths a day.
Mhm.
Like maybe that's another little piece of gem of home practice. If anyone wants to, they can all just 3 breaths a day and become aware of a body, of the trunk of a body. Yeah. Well, this has been so nurturing,
Mm.
so beautiful.
Mm.
And I'm wondering, how can listeners find out more about your work? What's the best way to reach you? And I'll put it in the show notes. If there's a particular website or something that's coming up, I can put that in the show notes as well. So, what is the
Best
best?
way to get to know what I'm doing and connect with me is through Saskatoon Insight Meditation.com. So that's the community that I teach with in Saskatchewan. I
Mm,
do teach online, and all of the events, classes, retreats are all
mm,
listed on there.
mm,
So folks, for example, I have a hybrid Wednesday night sit every week,
mm.
and online classes and retreats across North America. I'll
Beautiful.
be in BC in April.
Oh, great. Great. And you're mentioning the hybrid so people can be in person if they're in your area or online
That's right.
by Zoom. Is that what I mean? Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Great. So I'll put that in the show notes
Thank you.
for listeners to find out more. And any final thoughts as we bring this to a close? It's a beautiful conversation. I so enjoyed it.
Oh,
But any
so did I. I love your enthusiasm and I love the depth of your practice, and I just so appreciate what you're offering the world in bringing the practice alive in this way through your podcast and through all the other work that I know you're doing. So I feel a
Mm.
great gratitude for you.
Thank you so much, and I look forward to the day we meet in person, have more conversation. Like
Lovely.
there's so much conversation that I'm looking forward. It's bringing joy to think of that future in the present.
Same here.
Well, thank you so much again, and I want to thank all the listeners for listening and watching. If you're watching on YouTube, may our moments be filled with ease, and may you be present in as many of them. Thank you. Hello there, and thank you so much for stopping by this channel. I hope you find this content useful, and if you do, feel free to hit that subscribe button to really help me to reach to more people and keep this content going. Here we are journeying together, and let's see where this takes us.